down by Manila, and the interesting thing was the Japanese were there, but they didn't attack, and we couldn't figure out why they weren't attacking us. And learned later a little part of the story. But anyway, we finally met the old PBY. Now they flew so slow that we figured that we were in really bad shape because that thing could keep up with us. I think we're only going about 115 knots at that point. And then this was the day of the landings in Mindoro, which took place in January the 11th or 12th or something, which is yet ahead for the 50th anniversary. And we got close enough to land that we could see the smoke coming up from the battle. And before we threw out our receivers, we asked whether or not there was a runway available, and they said no, they didn't have one. And we said we're going to head back, and they said, well, we might have a strip for you by the time you get here. We were 2 or 3 hours out, and so we could see the smoke, and we told them we're throwing out our receivers, and to shoot up a green flare if they had a place we could land, and a red flare if they didn't, and we would try to land on the beach or in the water nearby, and they could pick us up, which we did. So we were all prepared to do that, and we were down then, I guess, under 1,000 feet. And finally, as we got there, just as we were approaching, they shot up a green flare. And they had bulldozed out. The Seabees were like engineers, seagoing engineers and so forth, and they had bulldozed out a strip, and a lot of fighter planes were already coming in that had been ferried to a certain position or whatever. And we hit the ground. We were on 2 engines and had been for a long time. And when we got on the ground, we put on the brakes, and this was just a dirt field. And we put on the brakes, and we got one good slowdown, and then the brakes collapsed because the whole hydraulic system was out, which we didn't know about. And these planes sat close to the ground. I'll show you a picture in a minute. And behind they had what was called a tail skeg that would keep the back from hitting the ground. So call the crew and said, get in the back, run to the back of the plane real fast. They got back there, and the old tail skeg would drag, and that would slow you down a little bit. And so it was narrowing and narrowing, and nothing but planes on either side. And then we saw this opening down 100 yards. We said, well, let's see if we can hit that opening between those planes. And fortunately, the right outboard engine was still working, so we hit the right outboard engine, and it pulled the plane. We didn't have any brakes or anything to steer ourselves with. And it just worked just perfectly because that outboard engine gave us enough power that we went sailing up between all those planes, off into the bushes, between the trees, smoking, screaming, stop. We all looked, we were there. So that was pretty exciting, Danny. And we got out of the plane, and the nose was up in the bushes, in the trees, the back was on the ground, everything was smoking and everything. So, but and there wasn't any food to be had there. They didn't have any food in that. And we went to the Red Cross, and they said, well, they had a little bit left, but they had this tent. Now here in the middle of combat, they wouldn't let us walk in with our sidearms, and we had these pistols, and we put our pistols outside. We came back out, and somebody had stolen them. In this picture that you see here, we had these pictures of pistols that were strapped on like that. We had to leave them outside, and we came out, and some guys that weren't even flying in combat, that were going back to neutral areas, had stolen them, and we didn't get any more through the end of the war. So,
Where are you?
Well, I'm one of those guys that's an officer. You can pick me up. There you go. How about that? So there.
Were the chocolate bars good?
I never ate one. They were so hard.
How big were they?
They were about this long.
Snyder.
Not this big around.
That could be a winner right there.
Now that's
For you.
I guess I did try one time, but they were so precious, they were so important to us that we didn't dare eat them because we were afraid we'd be in a lifeboat for a week or two, and you wouldn't have anything to eat. So we didn't dare eat those chocolate bars, except in an emergency. So that was one of the times, Danny, we got a close shave. Okay.
Could you hold that picture up so I can get it? I couldn't get it because of everybody's little heads.
10 or 11.
Did you kill anybody?
We probably did. We put some airplanes in the water and some ships we sank. So.
Can you put your finger? Can you point to yourself on there?
With your gun?
Well, you see the way that we flew on the ships. Actually, our squadron shot down 80-some airplanes, and we sank 40-some ships. And we had a pretty good record. In fact, we were recommended for presidential citation.
The president gives you an award.
You're supposed to. You want this? That's from you.
Yeah, no, yeah, I got it. I think one of the kids pointed it out.
So anyway, you can't see too much about the airplanes with this, but it was that's good. Okay, next question.
Jason had a follow-up.
Excuse me.
Oh, how many pilots would?
Well, you usually would take 3. One would basically navigate, and the other 2 would fly. But one of the guys on there, when we got to Morotai, we went out on a landing craft to go fishing, and he managed to chew his leg up in the propeller, so two of us flew the rest of the missions.
Okay, what? What does that mean? He chewed his leg up?
Well, he got him,
We
he jumped into the water, he's swimming, and he kicked his foot into the propeller of the
lost
landing
his
craft, and chewed up his foot, so we were short.
So he didn't even have feet.
We lost over half of our squadron of 18 planes. We lost more than half. Next question.
Like always, just like you just read that one, and do you have any more friends that was in the picture?
Any more friends?
Yeah.
That what?
From war. Do you have any?
Oh.
Do you have any?
No, I have lots of pictures, little ones that we took, and I really don't know where they are. I hope I can find them sometime. But I've got lots of friends who are listed on the monuments at the cemetery in Honolulu, the big, what was the name of the place? Punch Bowl. Punch Bowl. Punch Bowl, yeah. These were guys who were killed. Yeah.
Any more?
Next question.
No more.
No
Who
more?
will win prizes? Hold on. Let me see.
Danny?
Did you ever have to go down in the water?
No, we managed to avoid it several times. We were close. We were, I guess, as close as we came to, aside from the typical kind of mission like I told you about a while ago. I guess the closest we came was when they we took the landing strip. The military took the landing strip in Leyte, and they put down these metal runway. It was kind of a grid-like thing. It was almost like a metal, whatever, in the sand, so that it wouldn't. It enabled you to take off. And we had to fly one of those long missions, and our planes were always overloaded with fuel because we had to fly so far. And I remember on this one morning, and it was spongy, and our planes just weren't powerful enough to take off on that spongy stuff fully loaded. And we were taking off, and we couldn't get the plane off the ground. We couldn't get the nose wheel off the ground. You got to get that off before you get any lift in the things. And you know, you have a series of lights, so many 100 feet. First lights, you know, orange lights, and next lights, red lights, and so forth. And then we're in the Gulf, Lady Gulf, I guess. I forgot the name of it right now. Well, whatever. And it was clear the plane wasn't going to get off the end of the runway. We're going too far to stop. We couldn't stop. We'd gone critical at that point. And so then we got the nose wheel up, and we began to be able to bounce it. We got the plane to bouncing. And when we hit the last light and we took the last bounce, we did wheels up. And the plane started settling. And let's say there was a little bit of height at the end of where the runway was, and then they're settling into the water. And we settled down to the point that we thought we were going to go in. And we flew the mission, we came back, and we found out that we had really been on the edge of the water, apparently, because the prop wash from the propellers, whipping up wash, had washed the whole half the bottom of the airplane. I mean, it was just as clean as could be. The water, the spray that we had kicked up. So the tips of the propellers were in the water. And that's how close we came to doing it.
Yeah.
Superb skill in getting off the runway.
What did you eat when you were in the mission? I knew you were gonna say that. Oh gosh.
What did we eat when we were?
In your station.
You know, let me think about this.
How are you gonna remember?
I had shrimp cocktail. I know, and I probably had a steak. I don't remember.
I had a question, but
I've got one if you want to try to remember yours, Danny.
I have, yeah. How were you pretty happy when the war ended? Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty happy, although I was a little disappointed. I was supposed to go back out on a carrier and night fighters, which I really wanted to do, and get to fly the Corsair, which I thought was the most beautiful plane ever built. And I had that assignment, and going out on the FDR, the new FDR carrier, and so I was a little disappointed about that. But in the meantime, I got married, you see, and I was in the hospital, and I got married. And
Why were you in the hospital?
I had a little stomach problem, and they transferred me then to go down to Texas to go through the American Airlines School because I was going to fly the VIP types, and you know, very important people. And we were skilled at flying, but we didn't have all of the as much instrument training as you needed to fly the instruments and all of that. So we went down there. As a matter of fact, I have a picture here of the group of guys as we finished up somewhere. And here was our class. This was down